Hi guys, this is Justin Battling from The Great Grind, and in this video I'm going to be providing commentary for a session I recorded earlier today. It was 6 tables of 10 and L, and basically what I'm going to do is be commenting on some of the more interesting hands during the session. The session was around 45 minutes, but I want to provide around 20 minutes of commentary for the first 20 minutes essentially of the video, of the session I mean. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fast forward a bit just until we have 6 tables open. When I started the session, my filters on PokerStars were 10 and L and 5 and L, so kind of by mistake I loaded 1 or 2 tables of 5 and L and was just in the process of loading up 10 and L tables. So that's why you see on table 2 over here, 5 and L table. But soon you'll see I'll be switching that out for a 10 and L table. So the way I approached the session, I really just went in with the aim of playing my regular game, a bit looser I felt than I usually do. Either I was starting a session kind of in the mood to play either really tight, a bit nitty, passive, wait for some good spots, isolate the fish, or kind of more in the mood to really play. A bit higher 3-bet percentage, or try 1 or 2 new things, a bit more bluffy and so on. So I was kind of more leaning in that direction this session, which you'll start to see. In the end of the day, I broke even the session. I played really well. I felt I had 1 or 2 really good spots. Got lucky in 1 or 2 really big hands, but it kind of balanced itself by running quite badly against the fish, which will happen as well. So that's poker. I wasn't upset or anything like that. I wasn't tilty at all during the session, and yeah, that's also going to happen now and then. So right now I'm sitting with around $190 in my bankroll. I sold everything I had in my account maybe a year ago and took a bit of a break, redeposited $100 a few months ago. Basically took the $100 from a friend. I ended up paying him back, and now I'm sitting with around 180 of my own dollars in my account. And my aim is just to kind of focus on playing 6 tables, focusing on maintaining a very high win rate. Right now I'm at 11 BB per 100, which I'm really happy about. That's obviously going to change as I move up, but my aim is to really maintain a high BB per 100. So on table 5 here, we pick up the ace 10, decide to squeeze. I'm going to be ahead of these guys' ranges most of the time, so I'm fine with that play. I end up getting 2 callers if I remember correctly. Flop top pair, so I'm going to lead out here for protection. Probably, as I mentioned, I feel I have the best hand most of the time. The kings on table 4, standard raise. Just so you guys understand, this is table 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's kind of the numbering I'm going to be using in my videos. So the kings, I'm up against a fish. Yellow players represent fish, so I'm actually going to pause the video just so I can focus. A lot of hands happening around here. So the kings, standard 3x raise, get 1 player to call who's marked in yellow, which represents fish. You can see he's a fish because of the size of his stack. You start the hand with around $5, which is half a stack. He leads out for less than half pot, which is very donkey. I'm going to raise. I could have made it a bit bigger. I probably should have, but at $1, if he calls here, the pot's going to be around, it's going to be $2.72, and I can get the money in, well, most of the money in the turn, and obviously the rest on the river. Let's see what he does. Pocket 2s on table 2 standard, raise. So our fish re-raises us really small, which is a bit scary. They're gonna have sets in this spot a lot, but the reality is you just can't ever fold in this spot. He's gonna have such a wide range. You know, 10 jack, 10 queen, 10 king, 8, 6, 7, a queen jack, a lot of 10s, 10 king, ace 10, 10 jack, 10 queen, as I mentioned. So we just got to put the money in and, you know, hope we're ahead and that our hand holds. He's going to have a lot of flush draws here too. So we shove, do a quick look up to see if I missed anything, but even if I put him, even if I think he's a semi-decent player, I'm still going to probably get the money in here a lot of the time. He opens up 6, 7, so any 8 or any diamond, around 40% equity. And he gets them the river, so we lose quite a big pot, but we got to be happy with our play. We shake it off, move on to the next hand. Pocket 2s, we get got 2 callers so far. Standard 3x raise, so this is a 5 in our table, so 3x is to 15. We completely miss the flop, as we are gonna do most of the time with a small pocket pair. We're not going to c-bet on this board against 3 players, especially 2 regs. They're going to have a lot of aces in their hands, so we're just going to check and kind of give up. So let's pause for a sec. This king-jack spot, I see a lot of kind of weaker players calling in this spot. Now, it's not horrible, but the problem is that a player that's raising under the gun here, especially since we don't know anything about him at this point, we know he's probably not a bad player. He's probably not a fish since he's sitting with $11, but that's also not 100%. It's not a good assumption to make that he's not a fish. We have to wait and see. But since we know nothing about him, we're going to consider him neutral. And a neutral player, you know, when he's raising under the gun, he's going to have quite a strong range. So the problem with calling here is, number one, it's a drawing hand, so we have to hit something. It's not pocket 10s, which, you know, have some equity on their own. So we have to flop something, and even if we flop, say, a jack, you know, if he's got a strong range here, he's going to have just a single jack crushed a lot of the time, and we're going to be kind of just behind the whole hand most of the time against a stronger range. So I'm going to see what I do here. I believe I folded, but depending on my mood, and if I feel that this player is really weak, even if he's raising under the gun, I'm still going to call here, because, you know, I'm not going to make too many big mistakes with the king-jack. But he might make a big mistake if I do end up flopping a big hand. So ace-queen standard 3-bet here. So I end up folding the king-jack, which I think is the right play. So CJ Nails 2007 table 5, we don't know much about. Just want to go back. Pocket 8s, standard c-bet here. We're going to be ahead most of the time. This is a weak player. And, you know, we're basically ahead of everything but a jack. He's going to have some jacks in his range here, but we have to c-bet to protect our hand. Ace, king, queen comes off. He could hit a gut shot, or, you know, he's straight if he's got something like 2-3, so we have to bet. Ace queen, so CJ Nails calls our 3-bet, which we're not happy about. This is a good board to c-bet, but what I found, you know, and this is kind of true across all buying levels. When a player who is either neutral or a reg, as CJ Nails is at this point, when they call 3-bet, they usually have quite a strong range. Usually things like pocket nines, tens, jacks, queens, kings, or kings that most often will 4-bet, but queens, jacks, tens, nines, eights, sevens, things like king, queen, ace, king, ace, queen, ace, jack. So that range on this board has a lot of equity. So often what will happen is I will see bet in a spot like that, and they'll call with something like tens, jacks, queens, nines, king, queen, ace, king, things like that. So I'm thinking already, how am I going to play this hand? I'm probably going to have to double barrel to get things like queens, jacks, tens, nines to fold. He might also have the occasional flush draw, so I want to kind of put pressure on that. And some players might even fold something like king, queen to 2 big bets. So that's kind of what I'm thinking at this point. So let's see what happens here. So he checks. We have to bet. We can't just check. Why can't we check? Well, if we check here with, at the moment, very little equity in the hand against his calling range, as I mentioned, it's less likely now that he's going to fold to a turn bet if he's got something like tens or jacks or queens or a king. I'm also giving him a free card to hit any flush draw that he might have in his hand. So we have to bet and hope he has something like pocket sevens and just decides to fold. The pocket eights, we took it down, which is good. King 10, we're going to fold to the raise. So let's see what CJ Nails does here. So CJ Nails raises us, which is a bit concerning. The thing what kind of interested me was he raised relatively small. It's almost a mid-raise, which immediately told me, it seemed a bit weak to me. It's kind of hinting to me that he's got something like jacks or tens, and he just doesn't believe me. He doesn't believe that I have that king, and he just doesn't want to fold. So my plan moving forward in this hand was, I'm getting such a good price to call. There's $5 out there. I only have to put $1.50 in, and the pot is going to be big. But it basically means if he decides to bet the turn, no matter what it is, even if an ace hits and he bets, I'm probably going to just be folding out my hand. Thinking, he's got a big hand here, eights or kings or ace king, something like that, which I can't beat any of them, even if an ace hits. So, but if he checks, since I'm representing that king by calling, if he checks, then I can make a relatively small bet, and he is going to fold the tens and the jacks, and I can kind of just bluff him off the hand. So it's a bit of a more advanced play, and against a lot of rigs, I'm just going to fold this every single time. But since this looks weak to me, I decided to kind of stick around. Now, when the queen hits, that's really significant because, once again, if he bets again, I'm just going to fold my hand, as I mentioned before. But now that the queen hits and I now have made my pair, anything that I was, everything that I was ahead of when I was representing the king, I'm still ahead of now because I've hit my queen. What I mean that is, when I call on the flop representing the king, I'm telling him that I'm beating your jacks, queens, and tens. Now, obviously, if he has queens, I'm destroyed and I can't win the hand. But assuming he's got tens or jacks in the spot, if he checks now, I don't have to bet and push him out. I can just check and kind of protect myself against against him actually having the ace king here, the king queen, the pocket eights, and so on. So if I remember correctly, CJ Nails just checks here, and I'm gonna check behind. Now, if he had the flush draw, I am giving him that free card, which you usually don't want to do. But let's think about like his range here. He's not gonna have a flush draw very often, especially the fact that he check raised the flop. So I'm not too worried. It would be a bit gross if he did hit the heart in the river. But it's kind of, I just felt, there's not much value betting here. I'm not going to get him to call with anything worse. And I can't fold out anything better, as I mentioned. So I'm just going to check behind. And see the river. So the 6 is a good card, unless he had pocket 6s, but he's almost never, check raising the flop with pocket 6s. So he checks, and now I'm actually really confident I have the best hand. So I'm actually going to lead out here. It's a bit of a risky play, but if he had pocket 8s, the ace king, things like that, he's probably not going to be instantly checking that river like he did. He's going to be betting out to get some value for his hand. It's a bit gross, if I bet here, say $3 and he calls with something like king 10 or king jack, something like that. So a lot of the time I'm just going to check behind here. But my thought process was, if he's got that 10s or jacks, as it seems he does, he might say, well, this guy had a flush draw, and he missed it, and I'm going to now call. So I'm thinking there is some value in betting here, because I'm very confident I have the best hand, and he might make a crying call. So I bet half pot, and he just folds. So I'm happy with the outcome in that hand. It's a really interesting hand, actually. So I close out the 5NL table and I replace with a 10NL table. So now I have 6 tables of 10NL going. So this 10 jack, this 10 queen of suited hand that I have here on table 1, when DJ Alexa Lee raises here 30 cents, I immediately say, okay, I'm committed 10 cents. If I put in 20 now, I'm getting, I got basically 2 to 1, just slightly over 2 to 1 on my money to call. But the problem is this hand just doesn't hit often enough, and I'm out of position. So what's going to probably happen assuming no one else calls here, if I call the 20 cents, the flop is going to miss me most of the time. I'm going to check, he's going to bet, and I'm going to fold. So I want to avoid that. Because it's a leak. But if someone now calls behind, I'm now getting basically more than 3 to 1 on my money, and my implied odds are now very, very big against 2 players, especially the hand like 8 queen, because 8 queen suited, you're not going to win too often, but when you do with a hand like 8 queen suited, I'm saying if you win a very big pot, it's going to be with a flush or a straight. So this is the kind of hand which will hit those combinations. So my thought process is, the minute I see this spot, I'm saying, okay, if someone else calls, I'm gonna call. But my aim in the hand is to put in 20 cents and try and see a flop. I'm gonna put in 20 cents, and if I smash a flop, to go with it. If I don't, I just simply fold my hand or play a very, very small pot. And that's exactly what happened here. So we have a fish in the small blind, and we have someone we don't know anything about raising. So we're kind of in the middle here. And this is not a great flop for us. As I mentioned to myself, as I mentioned previously, we're looking to smash the flop. Like a flush draw, 3/8, 2 pair, gut shot, things like that. So we flop middle pair here, which has some value, but it's very difficult to make the nuts with my hand now. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to play conservatively, keep the pot small if I can, and just try and get a showdown. But that's not what I did in the hand, as you'll see in a second. I actually lead out here for 60 cents into 80 against two players. So immediately, like, you might say, why am I doing this? Like, doesn't this look like a mistake? But let's think about this for a second. If I check, I'm kind of inviting the original raiser to c-bet, which he's going to do with a very wide range of his hands. When he does, I'm kind of forced to fold. Okay. Even if the small blind folds, I'm probably just going to have to fold. I could call, but then I'm going to have very awkward time on the turn against most cards, unless it's kind of low card, and then I kind of have to check and hope he shuts down. So it's a tough spot to kind of put myself into. So I kind of opted to lead out here. And I'm leading out here because my thought process is as follows. I'm saying that this original raiser, neutral player, he's going to have pretty tight range raising from middle position. A typical range here is going to be something like all pocket pairs, some Broadway combos like King Queen, Queen Jack, and so on, and also very wide range of aces. He's going to have Ace 9 plus, Ace, all the suited lower aces, Ace 5 suited, Ace 4 suited, things like that. So against that range, this is quite a scary board. Imagine you're in this spot and you've got pocket, or say you're in the spot and you've got Ace Jack. What can you do? You can't do much. If you call or raise here, you're up against two players on a board which smashes their calling ranges. So I decided to lead out here thinking, if I can get the original raiser to fold, which is going to happen a lot of the time on this kind of board, especially multi-way. Now I'm up against this weak player, and I have quite a lot of equity against him. Why? Because he's going to have a very wide range here, and there's a lot of draws out there. So if he calls and the turns are blank, I can really smash the turn to make maximum value against a flush draw or a straight draw. If I just check my hand, even if the original raiser doesn't c-bet, it's going to be very difficult for me to win this hand, unless I turn an 8 or a queen, and no one kind of improves if a queen hits. So I lead out, and thankfully they both fold. Ace Jack standard, I'm just going to raise. Ace 4, I just decided to come along against two fish. I'm going to keep the pot small. I have some equity now on the turn. I full up. I should have bet out there. It's a mistake. I didn't. And they both, and I win the hand. So this 10 queen hand is also an interesting hand. So I lead out here quite standard. It's a bit loose in middle position, but I'm thinking I have a reg in the big blind who's going to be very tight, and I have two fish ahead of me. So what I'm hoping will happen is I'll raise, and either both or one of them will call, and the reg will fold out. And these two players, hopefully don't wake up with a hand. With the jacks here on table 3, I have a under the gun raiser and a caller. The caller is a weak player, we can see by the size of his stack. So in this case, as you'll see what I do, I want to raise to hopefully push out this original raiser. Also helps me get a sense of his range. So if I make it 80 here and he repops it, I can just fold out my hand. Now it's a bit of a shame because I do miss the chance of flopping that set. But the problem with just calling, I'm now against 2 players, and jacks don't play well multi-way. So, I mean, there's both pros and cons to how you can play the jacks in this spot. The king 4 I try to steal and I get re-raised, so I just fold it. Can't do much else there. So I'm going to look up a legendary to see if he's a reg. I have no idea. So like I said, I could just call here or I could raise. I think both are fine. The just calling is very conservative with a very strong hand. So I decided to raise, make it 90. Once again, the aim is to fold him out and let the fish call. So I get re-raised here with the 10 queen by the fish. So I mean, I have to call getting these odds more than 3 to 1, and my implied odds are very big considering he's got a full stack. And I not completely, but basically brick the flop. With the jacks, you know, it's a beautiful flop against, and my plan kind of worked. I got the original raiser to fold and the fish came along. So I'm in a C bet here. It's a very good board for me. I'm not too worried about most turns. So I don't have to go crazy. I can make it like $1.10, $1.20, which I think this is what I do. Yeah, $1.10. Now, while I was playing this session, I had another window open on the second monitor, and I had this jack hand going, so I wasn't really watching and paying attention here. And I remember I raised and just thought that the guy called, and now it's kind of c-betting. So that was actually a mistake, but thankfully it worked out. My donk bet on the flop. So I squeeze with the king queen here. Once again, I have a weak player in what is this? The cutoff. So you know, I want to isolate. I want the original raiser to come along, and hopefully the bigger stack to fold out. But I mean, even if both come along, I'm fine with it. With a hand like king queen, it plays a bit better than most multi-way. The original raiser calls, both call. Now that's a good flop for me. I'm gonna be ahead. Well, I can represent a big pair here, and it's gonna fold out most hands. So I'm gonna c-bet here basically every time. Don't have to make it too expensive. 130, it's a good price, and I believe they both fold. Pick up kings on table 6, which is always fun. Let's see what happens. So Zesta raises here, basically trying to steal the blinds, as we all do. There's two options I have here. I can just call, or I could raise. If I just call, the problem with just calling is I keep the pot at its minimum, the size of the pot to its minimum by just calling, and I also invite the big blind to come along. Now, kings doesn't do too badly against two opponents, but ideally I want to play it up. I want to play it heads up, so I have to raise here most of the time. I think that's the best way to play it, just because I need to build a pot, and Sasta is $15. Now, if I just call, I'm keeping the pot at 60 cents. It's going to be very, very difficult for me to get the pot to a big enough size to get all the money in, without getting in a very like weird spot where he's representing massive strength, and I don't know where I stand, and then I end up getting my $11 in, being crushed against a set or weird stuff like that. So I have to I want to raise here, and hopefully he'll kind of wake up with a hand like queens or ace king here, and just think that I'm trying to re-steal him, So in that case, he would probably re-raise me, and then now I can either call or re-raise him, and the pot's going to be big enough to get the money in on the flop or the turn. So I make it 80 cents, which is my standard 3-bet. He just flat. So at this point, especially that he flatted quick, he's probably not holding something like queens or jacks, ace king. So I'm going to raise here, continue representing a big hand, which I have, and building a pot, and he just folds. So ace king here, pretty standard. Let's go back a sec. So we have a limper, weak player. He's also short stacked, so we're gonna make it 40. My standard is 3x plus 1 big blind for each limper. Make it 40 cents. He flats, and I flop top 2, which is always a good thing. But let's think about this hand, start analyzing it deeply, right? So we have a weak player, limps under the gun. He's going to have a very, very wide range here, almost anything that you can think of, especially since we know he's a very weak player. So when we flop top 2, most of the time he's not going to have anything here. The problem is we have a flush draw, we have straight draw, like gut shots and things like that. So we have to bet. We want to protect our hand. We also need to build the pot because we want to get all his money. So we should bet here most of the time against a fish, probably all the time, every time So we make it 50 cents. The 3 of clubs is not a good card for us here. Just because I said, he's not going to have many combinations of aces or kings, since I have ace king. So he's going to have a lot of flush draws. But with that being said, like he's going to have so many different hands here. So I have to bet it again to build the pot and to get value. So I make it $1.10. I could make it a bit more expensive. He's getting a semi-decent price to hit that flush draw on the river, and I just I'm not going to be able to get the remainder of his stack. I'm going to have to overbet the pot. Let's see if I'm right about that. No, actually 4, 5. No, I'll be able to get all his money in the river, so I guess this bet sizing is fine. I still would like a bit bigger. So he calls again quite quickly, and the river's a really bad card for us. The 4 flushes out there. Any club in his hand, he now beats us, and he thinks, and he bets $2. So we're kind of hating life right now. Built up a nice big pot, and then he ends up betting the river, which he's going to have the hand such a big percentage of the time. I actually made a mistake here. I ended up calling him, which, looking back, I'm really not happy about. My thought process was that, we know he's a really weak player. We can't really put him on our hand. He's going to be all over the place. And I'm getting 3-1 on my money, and I said, what, let's just call here. Kind of a crying call. And not a good call. So this was one of the bigger mistakes I made in the session, and he ended up winning a nice pot. So instead of tilting, it's good to just think back and say to yourself, stick to your rules. 4 flush, a fish betting the river, you should fold probably 90% of the time, 95% of the time. unless you're really up against a complete maniac who's been bluffing you all night long, or trying to bluff you all night long. So I wasn't happy with myself. You'll see in a second that I mark him as a fish because he played that hand really poorly, except on the river. So we just shake it off and move on. So guys, I'm going to start wrapping this video up. I just wanted to mention a few things. Firstly, I really hope you find this video useful. I'd love to hear your comments, so write your comments below what you think, things that you'd like me to focus on and improve, any questions about specific hands. You're also welcome to email me directly at justin@thegreatgrind.com. I also invite you to visit the blog and subscribe to get all my posts straight to your inbox. And I'm going to be adding a video section to my blog soon, so you'll be able to check out everything. You also can subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me along. I'm going to be posting a lot more videos in the future, focusing on different areas of beating micro stakes poker, and depending how things go, hopefully low stakes as well, 25 and 50 NL. So thanks guys, and looking forward to hearing your comments, and good luck at the tables.